So in my family, this we called it the episode or episodes where Spock lost his freaking mind. He was unemotional for the most of the regular run towards this episode, but he decides to put his whole career in a line to save the paralyzed former captain he worked for. Now, this is the Menagerie. It's a two-part episode from the first season of Star Trek. It comprises the 11th and 12th broadcast episodes of the series. Written by Roddenberry, the great bird of the galaxy, with portions directed by Mark Daniels, credited for Part 1, and portions directed by Robert Butler, credited for Part 2. It is the only two-part story in the original series. Part 1 was broadcast on November 17th, and Part 2 was the next week on the 24th. In the episode, Spock abducts the former commanding officer, Fleet Captain Christopher Pike, locks the Starship Enterprise on a course to a forbidden planet, Talos 4, and turns himself in for court-martial, where he presents an elaborate story explaining his actions. The complexity of Star Trek's production had steadily increased the show's production time, leading concerns that Desilu would not be able to deliver episodes to NBC in time to meet their series commitments. The Menagerie was created as a means to reuse footage from the Cage, the unaired 65 pilot of Star Trek, which was filmed in 64, within a frame story is the early history of the Enterprise. As such, the two-part episode only required a week of production time. It was positively received and won a Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. Multi-part episodes would become far more common in later Star Trek series, including which I think is the best two-part of the best of both worlds. Feature music, Alexandre Courage, Jerry Finneman and William A. Snyder cinematography, production code 16, and again 50 minutes on both. Now the edited version takes out some of the key scenes, especially intro and extra of Part 2. This is 2267. USS Enterprise arrived at Starbase 11 in response to a subspace call First Officer Spock reported receiving from the former captain of the Enterprise, Christopher Pike, under whom Spock had served. Captain Kirk and Spock meet the Starbase commander, Commander Mendez. He informs it that Pike could not have sent any message, and a recent accident has left him paralyzed with locked-in syndrome, unable to move or communicate other than answering yes or no questions with the aid of a device operated by his brainwaves. Now, this is 2257. You would think there would be a more modern way to do it, but it works here. Pike refuses to communicate with anyone except Spock. After Kirk and Mendez leave to discuss the situation, Spock reveals over Pike's repeated no signals that he intends to carry out a plan that he has made. Meanwhile, Menendez confirms that there is no record of any message sent to the Enterprise. Mendez provides Kirk with classified information on the planet Talos 4, which was visited by the Enterprise previously under Pike's command in 2254, and is now under strict quarantine. Spock, meanwhile, commandeers the Enterprise by means of falsified records of Kirk's voice, places Pike under McCoy's care, and orders the ship to depart under the computer's control. Kirk and Mendez give chase in the Starbase shuttlecraft. After numerous hours, upon learning from the computer that the shuttlecraft does not have a fuel to return to Starbase, Spock is then brought aboard and gives himself up, confessing to mutiny. The crew find they are unable to change the current course of the Enterprise, which Spock affirms is heading towards Talos 4. Mendez convenes a hearing, at which Spock requests immediate court-martial, which requires 3 command officers. Kirk objects that only he and Mendez are available, but Spock notes that Pike is still listed for active duty. The tribunal begins, and Spock offers as his testimony what seems to be video footage of the Enterprise's earlier visit to Talos 4. Now, it recounts a lot of the moments when they meet up with the big-headed aliens, right? Now, as it goes along, Vina, who was not who she promised to be, she had promised to show Spike the secret of their health because there was a bunch of illusions going on. Now, back in 2267, the scene is interrupted by a message from Starfleet, which revealed that the images they were viewing had been transmitted from Talos 4. Mendez is placed in command of the Enterprise, but Spock begs Kirk to see the rest of the transmission. Now, in the second part, Spock trial continues, and the transmitted scene reunites with Pike in 2254 in a cell with a transparent wall. The Talosian begin their experiment, which consists of a number of illusory situations involving Pike and Vina in hopes of creating a new master race. They hope that they will mate and put together a race of slaves that will reclaim the war-damaged surface of the planet. Meanwhile, the Enterprise crew fails to break into the underground complex with weapons enhanced by the ship's power. A landing party attempts to beam in the complex, but only female members arrive. in order, as the Talosian keeper explains, to give Pike more choices for a mate. One is very cerebral and would be good breeding stock, and the second one is younger and is horny as hell. An attempt to blast through the cell with the new captain's phasers fails, as the weapons are apparently non-functional. That night, Pike is able to capture the keeper as he attempts to confiscate the weapons. Pike intuits that the phasers still function, and that their escape attempt was thwarted by an illusion, because they were reading her thoughts for most of the first part of the cage or the first episode. He forces the Talosian to reveal the hole in the cell wall. The humans proceed to the surface, but learn that it was the Talosian's plan. Number 1 sets her phaser on overload, preferring to die rather than be enslaved, but deactivates the weapon when more Talosians arrive. The aliens have found out that humans' unique hatred of captivity makes them unsuitable for the Talosians' plans, which must therefore be abandoned. Pike deserves an apology, but the Talosians point out that the failure spells the death of their species. Pike offers help from the interstellar community, but the Talosians feared that their mental powers would spread and bring other races to ruin. As the rest of the party are beamed back to the ship, Pike has shown that Venus' appearance up to now has been an illusion. In reality, she was severely injured in the Columbia's crash and further left deformed by the Talosians' failure to adequately repair her injuries. She elects to stay on the planet, and Pike returns to the ship. Now, the illusion that brought Pike in the ship and seeing all the survivors and one female survivor is all one big illusion. But here that the Talosians said we will not do it again. However, back in 2267, the transmission ends as the Enterprise arrives at Talos 4. Commodore Mendez suddenly fades away, and the Keeper appears on the viewing screen, informing Kirk that Mendez's presence was an illusion. The court-martial was employed to buy time to bring Pike back to Talos 4, where, if willing, he would be able to enjoy the illusion of a normal life. A message from Commodore Mendez that advises Starfleet has waived a prohibition against contact with the planet for this one occasion, and that Kirk is free to proceed as he thinks best. Pike is then transported to the planet, and the rejuvenated Pike and Vina are seen on the viewing screen, returning with the Talosians to the underground complex. This was a B-roll from the cage, by the way, not re-filmed. The Keeper appears one last time to wish Kirk well. Now, Jeffrey Hunter did not return for this episode. Now, the second Pike was played by a stand-in as well. So it's pretty weird. Now, what's interesting about this, ladies and gentlemen, the Corbomite maneuver took a little bit extra to make, and the Conscience of the King, which is a Shakespearean kind of play in reverse, were not received as well as this one. Now, the Menagerie was a solution to a large and growing problem for the show's production, but the way it was put together, it's quite well shot. Now, the Menagerie is highly regarded by fans, and in '67 won the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. Now, because footage from the master negative of the cage was edited in the master negative of the Menagerie, it was difficult, but no other color or 35mm copy of the cage existed. Only a black and white 16mm print owned by Roddenberry. In '87, the full color negative from the cage that had not used in the Menagerie was discovered at a film lab in LA and returned to Paramount. But you're seeing the scenes in Menagerie that were in color, a lot of the black and white scenes. And I don't even think the Spock screaming to women, I don't think it was in color, but later on it was probably. Now, some AV clubs said it was a B-. The whole thing plays out over 2 hours, and again, it doesn't quite gel. To me, they're wrong. Christian Science Monitor said it's 7 best. Sci-Fi called it the top 10 of the Spock episodes. Hollywood Reporter called it number 32. But Space.com, they had ranked it the 3rd best episode. And Collider had a top 20. Now, ironically, on November 13 and 15, 2007, the digitally remastered version of Menagerie in high definition and with cinema surround sound was released in theaters as a special 2-night only showing. It included a message from Roddenberry's son, Gene Roddenberry Jr., a 20-minute making-of documentary about a restoration process, and a trailer for Season 2 of the remastered series. This presentation was also shown in the UK for distribution for one night at selected Odeon cinemas in November 2007. Some repertory movie theaters in North America showed the classic 2-part episode as a feature film in the 70s. The 2 original series episodes were shown back-to-back and unedited as part of one program. One such theater, the Seville Montreal, showed 16mm prints of Menagerie episodes on a big screen as part of a program that included with a presentation of the Star Trek blooper reels from seasons 1 and 2. And we all know that CBC6 in Montreal, according to my research, was the only CBC channel for showing Star Trek in syndication well into the 80s and possibly the 90s. It was Sunday afternoon that these were unedited. And as a well-known fact, because James Doohan and William Shatner are Canadian, we've always had a great fascination. Not Kong, but the Klingon commander, Christopher Plummer, which was William Shatner's, was his understudy. So the Menagerie, if you had never watched Star Trek before, it's quite interesting because Spock in this episode is more Leonard Nimoy than Spock, because he's sort of a buoyant young officer in the cage, but this one he would give up. Like he's not logical the whole episode, but it was early enough in the series because Spock didn't really form until the Pon farr amok time. But like I said, and the weird shirt that he had Kirk in, he had his hair slicked back, and I think it was a gold and stuff. But Jeffrey Hunter, God bless him, I'm named after Jeffrey Hunter, and he should be proud of his acting here. But Susan Oliver, the famous scene where she's dressed up as a maiden and she tries to get Pike to help her, and she turns her head and goes, like that. That's probably one of the greatest bloopers of all time. So Susan Oliver, a very underrated actress, one of my favorites from Night Gallery as well. So ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing with our Star Trek podcast, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.